So welcome to our session from AMTOC2025. This is my colleague Narelle Rice, you'll be familiar with, and my name's Paul Swan, and you've already read what this is about. Our best piece of advice, particularly for this year, is to establish some routines. Now, just before we start, there's a bunch of things you may want to go into the website and download, and we'll give you spaces to go and do that. But the QR code that's on the far right will take you into the quick curriculum guides for version 9 of the Australian curriculum, which we'll refer to a little bit later in this session. And as you get to other places, feel free to stop the recording and download things so you can have a go. But let me, explain why we think the establishing of routines is so important, particularly at the start of a year. Essentially, if you think about it, you are setting the tone for the whole year, and we're just going to now focus on setting some goals or some ideas in mathematics for the year. And some of the routines we'll talk about will be things to do with playing games, for example, or they might be the way that you deal with a particular topic in mathematics, or they might be things for a whole school approach to things like problem solving.
So you've got different layers of routines there. You've got ones for the students, ones for the actual teaching, and then ones for the school.
And that's fair much to get involved in. So we're going to do each one of those as we go, and you'll see how it all unfolds. But look, I just thought, this is supposed to be a bit academic, so I thought I'd better talk about what a routine is. So I found out that there's nouns, adjectives, and a verb for routines. I learned something. But essentially, we're talking about some regularity in the way you do things, or in the adjective is you perform it as a regular procedure. Now, that could appear a bit boring. Yeah. So what we're really talking about is overarching routines that you then bring down to use at the child level or the teacher level or the school level, are the three levels that we're talking about.
Yeah. And I do love that you got on there, routine does not mean boring.
Yeah.
So in personal life, I've got children with disabilities, and routine is gold. So we know as classroom teachers, but I really like the idea of the difference between a routine and a schedule. A routine has that overarching flexibility to be able to modify to the situation. So, and it really, if I can just do one last thing really quick, it really lightens that cognitive load. So once you know what you're doing, you can then focus on the actual learning.
So Narelle's mentioned her family. I have 4 sons, and at one stage we had an 8-year-old, and then a 3-year-old, and then twins. So three children under 3. So we had a lot of routines running, and they saved us. So that's probably the best way of describing it.
But I bet you had to be flexible with them.
Oh, sure did. So let's take a couple of examples. And we'll take a general routine here. Okay. Yeah. So one might be how you structure a lesson, or whether your school's got an instructional model. Mm-hmm. So look, there's variations of them. There's launch, explore, discuss. There's I do, we do, you do, like a gradual release model. There are variations within all of that. But generally people have some model or some approach to lessons, which then informs things like the planning, and it works forwards and backwards. So an example would be, so we've just given a basic example here. If your lesson has some sort of warm-up or review at the beginning, it's likely that you're going to run in some sort of cycle. And
why would you run in a cycle?
Well, I need to be upfront. I'm lazy, right? So you need to understand.
You could say efficient.
Right? But essentially, you would want to have one thing and you want to develop over a period of time, because we're talking about a warm-up's about 8 minutes long, 10 minutes. The first time you do it, you're really still establishing the idea.
Yeah. And it's not going to take you 8 minutes.
No, it'll take you 15 or 20. All right? But then you become a bit more efficient at that routine or that idea. So we've got a fluency activity. It could be a game or something like that, which we'll demonstrate as we go. But you'd want to come back to it. Then in the next cycle of weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, you're probably going to come back to one of those again, because the idea of, multiple exposures to something, repeating the idea. And as the kids become more what I call game fluent or task fluent, they can focus more on the mathematics. So, look, if that's the thing that's interesting to you, then whiz and grab the guide to planning and have a look at some of the guide to mental warm-ups. And just think about that cycling.
So there's the 2 different guides there, and the one to the warm-ups is very much about, if you have a look on that planner, it's about including all the proficiency strands. So it's making sure that you've got a nice balance of understanding and reasoning and problem solving with fluency activities. So, and why have you got Friday as blank?
Okay, I wanted to have a flexible day because my rule of thumb is, say a term's 10 weeks long, well, let's really call it 2 4-week chunks, because you're going to lose something in the start or somewhere along the way. You're going to lose something at the end, so you can be really focused in 2 4-week chunks.
I'm very impressed you're still saying that. I haven't been out the classroom just
for
a while. But there's, you've got swimming lessons and Christmas assemblies and oh my goodness. Yeah,
there's always something. And likewise in a week, it doesn't have to be Friday, but the notion of having some flexibility so that you might have noticed something and you decide my kids need just a little bit more work on that. It gives the teacher that opportunity based on some formative assessment to make some adjustments. If your routine is so tight, then that's a problem. So you need that, as you mentioned, that flexibility.
And from a teaching point of view, I love repeating that fluency activity because it's hard work the first couple of times, and then you actually reap the benefits as you go. And as you said, you're then freed up to make some observations on students. And
so if you've got a routine in place, it also makes it easy to do a thing called differentiation, which we can talk about a little bit later. So that would be an example. Now, let's take this down another level. So let's say we have this whole school approach to doing a lesson. In there, we say we've got the lesson goes like this. As a component of the lesson, we've got a thing called a warm-up or review. As part of that warm-up or review, we're going to play games. So once again, if you need to know more things about games, I've got a little guide that will help.
That's free, that you just download, and it's got lots of practical tips because Paul's great with cards and dice and all that. So he's put all his experience in there. It's pretty good.
Okay, so let's demonstrate what we're talking about. And if you want to download this game, in fact, we're going to give you one if you stay and watch for the whole session. Then you'll be rewarded. You'll be rewarded. So in here, Narelle, would you like to demonstrate what we're talking about here?
Yeah, so here you've got a thing called a write and wipe sleeve. So did you want me to do it on there? I think we've actually got one here.
And look, one of the reasons using write and wipe sleeves is if you want to laminate, please go for it. But after a while, you can have so much laminated stuff, whereas we can reuse a sleeve. Now, we're not even going to write on this sleeve. We're just going to use it as protection. So let's have a look at what Narelle's going to do.
So then we've got the board that we're going to be using. And a spinner and some dice, but let's just focus on the actual sleeve. Now, it looks flat, but you have to teach children as part of the routine to feel for where the gap is, and then you have to teach them to open it, and then you often have to teach them to put a holder hand in there, and then you've got to slide the piece of it. So all of that stuff creates fine motor skills, and it is an important thing in itself. But some teachers, as you said, decide that's too complicated, they're just going to laminate. But it's your call, and it'll be different for different students. You could differentiate that as well. So now that I've got that in there, it's nice and protected. And with our routine, we're going to use this several times. So I will keep it in there.
So if it was fluency routine 1 and you did it the next day and the next day, no need to do that.
No, you're keeping this in here. And as your students get really good, sometimes I do them, never first term, but as you go, do them double-sided. So there's one on the front, one on the back. And then I've got 2 weeks, but that's not until the students realise that they have to look at my whiteboard. And when I've got this up on the whiteboard, they know which one to look at.
So that's a routine you've established. We look at the whiteboard.
Try to get as many instructions out without verbal prompting, just so as you don't get that. So which one am I doing?
So here's a spinner game. So now we've got what's the next bit?
So we've got looks like we might need a spinner.
Yes.
Okay. Now these spinners are universal, so all of your games they all fit on. So you just need to buy the one spinner, but you do need to pop the silicone feet on the back. Now you very much like the silicone feet in a beautiful 12, 6, 3 and 9, so they're equally spaced, but the reason their silicone feet are important is it actually gives it a little bit of grip. Otherwise when they spin it flies across the page. So
okay, so we've introduced a spinner, we've now introduced a problem. You can almost see it there. So now our routine is what happens when that spinner lands on a line. I call them a liner.
A liner! I love a liner. Okay, what's the classroom rule?
And look, there are two possibilities here. One is you spin again,
Yep.
if that's easy for you.
Yep.
Or the one that you quite like is to give a bit of choice.
I do. Yeah. I have a rule in my classroom that when it's on the line, the person who's flipped it, they get to choose. The reason I make that a routine is because then they do double the amount of maths. Mm-hmm. They're invested because it's their go. And they will calculate this one and they'll calculate this one and they'll work out what's going to give them the best option and the strategy. So.
Okay, now the other thing is we have some counters there.
Oh.
Again, your little packet.
Yes.
And we only have 2 colours.
Why do you only have 2?
Right. Well, this, once again, if I'm doing something like fluency, I want maximum turns per minute.
Yes.
Right? But I do appreciate now and again you'll have a third child. Right?
And
that's okay.
Yep.
I definitely don't want 4 because then it means the positioning's out, someone's sitting upside down.
And so 6s start to look like 9s and you've got directionality issues.
There's going to be a fight because someone forgot their turn. Right? So I'd rather just keep it simple. But Narelle, I'm just going to establish a routine for the year. Mm-hmm. I am the blue counter for the whole year, and you're the green counter for the whole year.
Okay,
and that's
so
it.
It looks like we could teach them left and right.
We could do a whole
at the
of
same time. Okay, so the left player is blue and the right player is green. Yep.
Whatever works for you. We appreciate sometimes people are away. You're going to have to vary that routine, but that's what we meant about having some flexibility. Now, once you've done that one game, you could play 50 games that are just slide the thing in, put the spinner on, and this happens to if you win it, if you get 3 counters of your colour in next to each other, this is in a row, column or diagonal, like a tic-tac-toe or a bingo.
So that's what you're saying there.
Yeah.
Yep. And why did you have the transparent counters on there?
Because one, I like to be able to see, because it helps me, and it also just enlarges a little bit. The other thing is they're 19 millimetres.
Yes.
Deliberately so because the fit squares that'll fit on a printer that you can print
easily.
They'll be 20 millimetre squares, so they fit inside without someone sort of knocking something.
And just in terms of differentiation, you've got routines that you need to set up about organisation.
Yeah.
So what are rules for counters? The rules are they have to stay in contact with the surface, things like that. You have differentiation. Some children can't actually pick them up.
Yes. Yeah.
So they're allowed to then place them on their desk so they can slide them off because they can't get the little thing underneath. And then for some students with the differentiation, counters are just too problematic.
That's right, so that's where you're going to use the right and right.
Yeah, so then we're probably going to have either 2 different colour textures and actually write it, or we can write an initial if they're a little bit older. But children that get very upset when their counters get moved or bumped, children that have executive functioning problems with self-control, things like that.
So look, we're saying there's a base routine, and then from that base routine, you can then play with a little bit for the kids in your class. But if you have no routine, it is chaos. And I'll be up front. The first few weeks will be chaos. I can't kid you about that sort of thing.
But for me, that's really important learning. When children are learning how to learn within a classroom situation, there are lots of really important life skills.
So imagine the whole school was on the same page and, the year 2s have learnt this, then they transition to year 3 and year 4. Those routines will roll across the school. So what we want to do is now talk about a broader idea of a routine, and whether you call it a whole school approach or whatever you might want to call it, it's the notion that there's a way that we do things across year levels. And I've chosen problem solving. Okay. Now the reason I've chosen problem solving is I noticed that the version 9 Australian Maths curriculum uses a phrase called mathematical modelling, okay, which is a bit more than problem solving, but it has most of the key elements of problem solving in it. So once again, it's well worth exploring the ACARA website to have a look for some of these bits.
They've got a beautiful diagram, I think you can
which we're going to bring up right now. So first of all, in terms of problem solving, the original process, the original routine was by a guy called George Polya, who wrote a book, How to Solve It, and it was published in 1954.
I love you can just rattle that off.
It's still around. However, he just talked about 4 ideas. You have to understand the problem. You then have to devise a plan, you have to carry out the plan, and you have to look back. Now, no one ever does the last one.
Which is why if you look at the free downloadable blue poster that says problem solving process, it's got the Narellism on there. And I actually teach students how to look back and check. Because if you just say to them, "I'll go back and check your work," they do exactly what they did before. And if you do what you did before and expect a different outcome, that's a definition of something in there.
You're going to be in trouble.
So it's actually got sub-dot points about how to specifically teach children to check. So that's the POLIA process, the 4 steps.
Now, you're going to be in tune with the Australian Curriculum version 9 because they have this mathematical modelling process in a poster, which actually has the same ideas: understand, plan, do, consider, which is a way of checking. And I really like what they've added: communicate, to explain, discuss, show what your findings are. And we can go into detail.
Essentially, the POLI is the 4 steps, and then a CAR has got pretty much the same 4 steps, but they've added the 5th one of communicate.
So essentially here's a routine. So that's an overarching routine run across the whole school. Now let's bring it down to an idea. So Narelle, we're going to need, we're going to bring some things up. I'm going to let Narelle get a little bit sorted here, so she's ready to go here. And then what we're going to do is take an idea. So, and basically we're going to take this same idea. Now, here's a routine. It's one that I developed with a colleague of mine called David Dunstan. And, it's not our idea. We got this idea from some work that was done at Berkeley University, particularly to help girls get more involved in mathematics. But we coined the phrase "check the clues" because we wanted to focus on that POLIA step 4, check the clues. Now, essentially the way it works is you have a group of 4. So there's my first thing. It's a group of 4, okay? Each person in the group will get a clue card, and there are 4 clue cards.
So they're each getting a different clue card.
Yeah, which we'll take you through in a minute. No one can take your clue card. No one can read your clue card. No one child can take over. I can help you read yours, support you, but no one has got it taking over that group. The other thing is there's normally some sort of recording going on here. And so, Narelle, do you want to get that little whiteboard pen?
Yeah.
Normally I put that whiteboard pen, one child gets it. And we're not all going to snap around and take... We'll all have a turn over a period of time, but otherwise it's a free-for-all.
And this will flow into your other subjects. So, for example, in science, you'll often have a similar setup. You'll have a recorder or whatever. So
Okay, so let's go through the process. And bearing in mind that whole POLI thing, understand the problem, devise a plan, carry out the plan, look back, and then we'll have the communicate.
Okay.
Now, if I just take you to the next thing, and people need to be a bit careful because those cards you see there are not together. So Narelle's got the set that's cut up, and we'll just hold them up for you. You can have a little look. So they're individual cards. Now we're going to try and simulate this down below. Okay, but imagine there's 4 people and each one gets a card. Okay, now even when I've done this with teachers, they're really keen to start doing the problem. So
they just want to jump in and solve it.
Okay, so in here there are 4 cards, and everyone would read their cards. So they read it out to the other people. Now all of you can read. Okay, so imagine that we've done step 1, which was we read. We do nothing. We don't touch the pen. We don't decide where to start.
So if we just go down to the visualizer, if this was my little group of children sitting around here, this person would read this out loud, and they would actually be holding the card. So other people can't actually see it.
And look, if they need some help, then it's fine. We can do that.
So this little pop-it says the number is 2 more than a give me a multiple of 5. And then the next child reads out to the other 3 who need to practice their listening skills of not talking while this person's talking. Their number is even. The 3rd person reads out. This one, the number has a 6 in the tens place. And then the final child reads, the number is a 2-digit number.
Okay, and at that point there, we have to stop because we want to think about what we just read.
But I know the answer.
Yeah. And then we want to make sure we understand the problem because kids jump in really quickly. And you could solve this problem pretty well starting with most of these clues. But what we need to be is quite efficient. So one of those clues tends to knock out more numbers or be more focused than others. And I'm going to suggest, and we have a discussion about, but I think the number has a 6 in the tens place is actually, now I'll bring this up to the big screen so everyone can see that. See, the number has a 6 in the tens place.
Why did you want to do that card first?
Because I think it knocks out the most number of numbers. The numbers even would knock out about half of them.
Okay.
All the odds are gone. You're left with the evens, okay? The number is a 2-digit number. Well, that's pretty well everything except for the 1 and 3-digit
the top
number.
row.
Yeah.
Okay, yep.
Okay.
Bottom.
And the one that's quite involved, the number is 2 more than a multiple of 5. So that's every multiple of 5, 5, 10, 15, 20. Add 2 on, so it's
That sounds very
7.
specific.
Yeah, right. It's a lot of work. So that's why I'm choosing to go with the number has a 6 in it.
Okay.
Now, Narelle, you're the holder of the pen.
Okay,
all
I
right?
am the master of the pen. Yep.
So I would like, can you just mark in
Just checking with the
where
glare.
6
Yep.
is in the tens place?
Where 6 is in the tens place. Looks like that one.
Yeah.
And these ones here.
Yeah.
Is a line okay,
Yeah,
or did you
that's
want
fine.
to
You can circle whatever works for the kids.
Circle.
I'm not fussed too much about it. But now what you've really done is narrowed down, and now actually one of those clues is redundant.
Oh, hold on. So we've just done this one,
Yeah.
the number in the tens place, just so as I can keep track.
Yeah.
Can I just pop
Yeah,
that
that's
one over
fine,
here?
yeah.
Okay. All right, so now we've got these ones. So,
The number is a 2-digit number is actually a redundant clue now, isn't it?
oh, but that was my card.
Yeah, it's
and
okay.
I'm
We're
sad.
gonna use that card. We will use that card, right?
Okay, all right.
That's
So
simple.
we've done the number is 2
Yeah,
digits.
yeah,
They
it's already
all,
covers
they
it.
all, yeah, check that.
Okay, so now we've got a couple of options here. And once again, so we could go the number is even. So if the number's even, we could cross the odd numbers off.
Okay.
That's up to you.
So that, and how do I know if it's even or odd?
Okay, so then I would ask questions about the ones digit, does it end in an etc.
Okay.
All right, so now we've actually been left with, there's only a few numbers.
Ew.
So now, hang on, there's a clue that says the number is 2 more than a multiple
I'm just going to
of
move
5,
this
yeah?
one because we've done it. Sorry, number's even. Good.
2 more than a multiple of 5. So, okay, so a multiple of 5 would be 60, 2 more would be 62. So we could put a mark around 62.
Okay, I'm going to put a big circle around that one. Yep.
And then, hang on, another multiple of 5 in that domain is 65, so it'd be 67, but it's already crossed out. Yeah. So I think the answer is 62.
Okay.
Okay, but the rule is, and this is to emphasise this fourth step, this idea of look back, is you need to reread the clues in a different order to the original. Okay, so we don't want to go in the same order because we started. Remember, it's got a 6 in the tens place, so we could go. Yep, you've just shuffled them out, so you've got the number as even. Is that true for our answer?
Even. Yes,
Okay.
because it ends in a 2.
Okay, a lot of language going on here. Okay, here's another one. Is the number a 2-digit number? Well, yep, looks like it to me.
2 digits. Yep.
Okay, so does the number have a 6 in the tens place? Can you show me the tens place? 6 tens or 60?
Tick.
Yeah. And it's 2 more than a multiple of 5. So if I subtracted 2,
Okay.
because I said 2 more,
2.
it takes me to a multiple of 5.
Okay.
And so straight away, now what we've got is, if I take us back here, we've actually read those clues 3 times. So I often use this for more literacy focus on mathematics. But did you notice that we had an overarching routine, Polya, or we could talk about now this idea of mathematical modelling.
Yes.
Okay, and there's a lot of communication in that discussion.
Yeah.
It's not about solving it in the quickest time. It's about being very clear, and I wanted to focus on check the clues, which is why it's called that.
And you've actually sort of got like a babushka doll here. You've
That's
got a
right.
routine in a routine in a routine. So you've got that whole school routine, but then you have very specific classroom routines, like we sit on these chairs or we sit knee to knee in a circle or all that type of stuff. And then we each get one card and you only read your own card, those types of routines.
And one person in charge of the pen.
Yes, that's right. And then you might have the school routine about using check the clues.
And look, I have one extra rule that I add. So if you've got a class of 32, you've now compressed your class of 32 to a class of 8.
Okay.
I will only come and answer a question if all 4 of you put your hand up. And I reserve the right to ask any one of you what the question is and why you're asking it.
Okay.
So it's not the one child just taking over, right? And that takes a while, but once they get that idea, it's pretty neat. Now, look, it's for you guys, it's the start of the year. If you want to try something, please feel free to download. Now, I'm giving you a little warning here. The gold one is more for younger kids, year 2 to 5.
Yep.
The other one says up to year 7, but I'll be frank with you, that's pretty hard. So I'd always start with the gold one. If you really feel got a really good group of year 6s, then maybe try the silver one. But I was probably a bit hard when I made that. Now, the advantage of all routines is this is one about number. This is more clues about clues in place value. Is you want to be able to then take that routine and apply it. So an example would be, you could take that, see, you can see the same 4 cards. Now, instead of having a board with numbers on, you've got a board with clocks on. Right. So now the same routine works. What I've done is change the content. The content now it's very visual in this case. It's looking at the clocks, some analog and digital. If you look at the other one, the one with money, I've even got a symbol in there. It's crossed out the $2. And this is about money that's in your...
That's not.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's got some words, it's got some pictures, and then they're looking at the elements of that. So the idea is that you could take that same idea and extend it. Now, you were saying that when you've used this, you use it for a slightly different purpose.
I really like it. So once it is quite complex to start, I'll be honest, because if you can just flip back to that last slide as well, you will notice the one that's got the... Go forward one. You see they've got some of them have got 4 cards on and some of them have got 6. You've got a beautiful little quick video with you and David, and I read it and I was like, I don't get what to do. And then I watched the video, I was like, now I get it. Okay. So those 4 cards, there's always 4 and a 6. And the 4 are the ones that you give each student. And then the 6 are the ones that you actually, they could be the answers that you cross off. And so when you're looking at those, once you've got that routine developed, it's taken a lot of work. They're learning social skills, they're learning all sorts of things. A review is really important in a school. So if there are some things that you really need to do by multiple exposures, so things like time, which is that clock up there, you can't just teach in one little block. You go nuts. So you need to just drip feed it over and over. And so I would find I would pop 1 or 2 of these in a term, just so as they would just come back to do it with the clocks. So I found it to be a very effective way to have those reviews in a slightly more interesting way than other forms that are out there.
So essentially what we're saying here is if you're going to do something, do it well, establish the routine. It does take longer and more work. Then you'd want to use it a lot, not just one or twice off. And that's why we wanted to apply it outside of that. If I was doing the clues, I'd always start with the number ones on the board, just easier to work with to begin with, and then extend it to the other.
But you've got them in shapes, fraction, like you've covered the whole lot.
So the idea is to have those routines. Now, what we want to do is sort of finish this session talking a little bit about really broad routines. So we talked about school level, we talked about within that school level, then putting it down to the classroom level. Within the classroom level, what happens in the warm-up. Within the warm-up, what happens to a game, and all of those sort of things that's said there. Now I want to talk big picture. So the Australian curriculum, and if it's useful to you, Narelle and I spent a bit of time making what we call quick curriculum guides. Now,
it wasn't a quick process.
Now, bear in mind, if you're watching Western Australia, then West Australia is not doing the version 9 curriculum. They'll be doing their own, so I just need to be upfront. In Victoria, the codes are slightly different, but the intent,
pretty much the same.
The intent is pretty well the same.
Swap the A with an E. I think it is.
And obviously New South Wales has its own curriculum. But look, essentially, if you want to download these, please do so. But what I want to do is point out to you that something that we learned as a result of this exercise here. We won't go deeply into what all this stuff means. You know what the codes are.
I think you've got little videos on that.
If need be. If you need to know what the clocks mean, this little thing here, or the star, please watch the little video about it. Okay. But now, what we want to talk about is some routines that sit inside this whole thing. Now, I'll just take us off here for a second. Okay. What we try to do is lay side by side the development of some ideas. Now, you won't be able to see that in great detail on your screen. The two things will be this triangle, looks like a triangle.
So if I can just give a little overview. The yellow is year 1, the red is year 2, the pink is year 3, and the purple is year 4. And they are all about number but they're not all place value, are they?
No,
You've
and there's
got place value and
it's got some fractions, but the same idea happens. Now, what we want to do is expand that a little bit. And down the bottom row, you've got some things there, and the common thinking is the part, whole thinking. Now, you won't be able to say, let's expand that. We just need you to know where it came from, okay? So there's a classic example on the left-hand side there. Some physical material. So in this case, we're going to bundle some sticks. Okay. From the bundling of the sticks, we developed the oral language of 24, and then we have the symbol 24, and all of that sort of thing. We used arrow cards there, but can you see that three-way?
That
and it
triangle.
goes, yeah, but it's not just single way; it's going both ways. And if you here's a tip: if you got difficulty with teen numbers, Narelle's made a bundle of little videos just to talk about that difficulty. But that's not our purpose today.
Yes.
On the right-hand side, you want to talk
just
about...
before we go to that right-hand side, I remember you first showed me this when I was very early in my teaching career, and I was running around from Little E's with year ones up to year 9 in the secondary at that stage. And it actually blew me away. I would use that model of making that connection really explicit between the physical stuff they were touching, the spoken language, and the written maths symbol. And this works from if you are doing something with very little children, like just what a number or a numeral is, right through when you're doing algebra in the secondary. It's a big routine.
Yeah, and essentially that physical material could become a virtual material. But if you're doing fractions, I definitely want you using the physical and folding paper.
And so for me, it was a game-changing routine that when I could put into my actual practice, I could see how it improved my teaching across a range of areas.
Okay, so now we want to talk about this other embedded
and then
idea.
we've got a second routine that's a little bit different, but you can see it also spans across, and this is the idea of part, whole. And often when I go into schools and I talk about part, whole, I immediately get half the school switch off and go, oh no, that's for the little kids. But it's actually not. It's an area that when you understand, it actually lays that foundation for that algebraic thinking. So if you understand that you have a known part, and then the red one that's coloured in, that's the part we don't know, or the unknown, just even that language I've just used of known, of unknown, of part, of whole, getting that consistent across the school is so essential. I think literacy's done a beautiful job in this area. When they want to talk about consistency with language, they're all on the same page. It's phoneme or grapheme, whereas if we can all talk about knowns and unknowns and parts and wholes, it will really help.
The interesting part here, you made the point, is
fun.
It's in the algebra. It's in algebra, you said, and the algebra links nicely to the number. And this is why we need the big idea of big routines. Now, this is just what we would call additive thinking. In that. And there's another set for when you multiply, but we're not going there today.
But it's the same routine. Yeah. It's the same process. It's about what do I know, what don't I know. If I join the two parts together, I get the whole. If I have the whole and I split it, I get the two parts. And the algebra component within version 9 of the curriculum is beefed up, can I say that? And beautifully scaffolded across the years. So this is something that as a whole school routine, instead of saying, oh, you've got this number and then because it's addition, you do the opposite. And instead of all that business, it's like, no, what do you know? You know the parts. You know the whole. You've got a whole part unknown. What are you going to do? And then it actually ties in with Polya too. Yeah,
which is really good, which is that big routine. So look, we've run through this fairly quickly, and there's routines within routines of the babushka doll, as Narelle said. So we wanted to thank you, and you've got all the way to the end of the presentation, but there's just a little bit more. So, like you have the steak knives that go with the other bits.
But wait, there's more.
There's more. So here we go here. So one, we want to thank you for coming and have a look. The second is we put a game.
Can I interrupt you? I also want to thank Ange for organising AMTOC. It's a really great initiative. So.
Yeah. Okay. So you need to be aware of that. So we put AMTOC2025 as the code. Feel free to download. Now, have you got the game here?
I've got one.
And it's called Gold Rush. I don't want to go too deeply into it because you can read the instructions.
Yes.
But essentially, it's about a theme of gold mining. Perfect if you work in Ballarat or Bendigo or one of those places. Essentially, there's the notion of some fool's gold and some actual nuggets. Its focus is multiplication facts, but it's got a bit of addition and subtraction. And the kids keep a little bit of a bank book. And the other thing I like is, once again, within here, that would go in a right and white sleeve. You can use an A3
Okay,
one.
do you want to
yeah,
go down to the
show us how it works,
visualizer?
So,
So very similar as what we did at
Yep.
the beginning. It goes in the right and white sleeve, but I will just give you the heads up. Any children who have got sensory difficulties are not going to like this bit. And then you need to, again, you do your holder and your popper, you've got all that stuff. So it's the same routine with the right and white sleeve, and then we're also using the plastic spinner.
The same spinner.
That goes on top there. So you could just see how that then goes from one to the other. Yeah.
And we are getting some A3 sleeves without the Velcro.
Without the Velcro.
But the other reason I like this is that some tracks are riskier, but the rewards are greater. So it's just looking at some of those sort of things. So look, we appreciate you spending your time, your valuable time with us. There may be some questions. We've tried to put something on here that'll tell you the stuff we've used, how we've used it. Feel free to send us an email if you need to know anything else. But look, as we said, we want to thank Angie Rogers for organising AMTOC and inviting us to speak, and have a great year.
Yeah, lovely. Best wishes.